He was a Korean War veteran. Mr. Spellman, when were you drafted, or did you enlist?
I was drafted in 1950, first part of the Korean War,
Where were you living at the time?
in Salina, Kansas.
And why did you pick the branch of service that you joined, or just?
They just sent me to to the Army.
Alright. What do you recall about your first days in service?
Well, not the first day, but I remember I was enlisted in Kansas City. They put me on a bus, took me to Fort Riley, Kansas, and I was in the Army.
How did you feel about?
I knew it was my duty, and so I just felt I was going to do it and do the best I could.
Alright. Would you like to tell me anything about your boot camp or training experiences?
Well, it was at Fort Riley, Kansas, and was in the Army, foot soldiers, infantry, what we call it. So we marched and we hiked and we shot weapons and learned to shoot rifles and bazookas and all those good things that make us soldiers.
Do you remember anything about your instructors?
Not too much about them, but they were good, and I was appreciative of the way they handled us in the Army.
Did you have any certain motivation that got you through to the Army?
I was decided I was going to do it like they wanted me to do it. I wasn't going to argue with them. I was going to go right into it and learn all I could and do what they wanted me to do.
And where exactly did you go in the Korean War?
Well, I was at Fort Riley, see, for 50 to 51, and then I got into from afterwards in the training of these soldiers. Well, I got sent to the finance office in Fort Riley, and then they needed one more man in Korea in finance office, the 2nd Infantry Division. So I was sent to the 2nd Infantry Division in Korea from Fort Riley.
Do you remember arriving and what your surroundings were like in Korea?
Yes, I do. We came from Busan by train up to Seoul, Korea. Then they put us on a truck. There was a whole busload of us, a bus or a truck. And we went interior then to Chuncheon, Korea. And then I stopped, and then they put me in a Jeep, took me over one hill to the office where I was to serve.
What was your duty over in Korea?
I was in the finance office, and we kept records. Every man had a record just like this. And we posted his paycheck whenever he took money on these records for every man. And then, so that was our job to pay the men every 15 days. We'd have a group come and we'd actually hand them money, and they'd sign for it. So that was our duty.
Did you see any combat while you were over in Korea?
No, I sure was. I was 5 miles from the front line, but that was close enough.
All right. Can you tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences?
Well, one day the commanding officer says, "Lee, Spellman, come with me." So we got in a Jeep, and he had boxes of money. It was Korean money, and we had to have them. Put those boxes in the Jeep, and he and I went to Seoul, which is about 35 miles across the country. And there I was in a Jeep. He had a 45 on his all he had for weapons, and we were going 5 miles from the front line. I thought that was pretty memorable to go to Seoul. We traded these boxes of won money for what they call script. And then the script then went back and paid the soldiers as they required or want to be paid. Mm-hmm.
Did you stay in touch with your family, and if you did, how?
You know, of course I did. I got married at 51, and I was already in the Army. And I lived in Salina, just 35 miles from Fort Riley. So that year and a half, then I drove back and forth to Salina, and saw my wife then. And then in Korea, then we just wrote letters, and I did receive a telegram. My son was born while I was in Korea in July, so they sent me a telegram telling me my son was born. So that was the way we communicated.
So what was your food like over in Korea?
Well, it was just army chow, as you call it. And thought they did a real good job feeding us over there because we were a long ways from Solana, Kansas and Fort Riley. But it was too rich. I didn't have much activity. And I gained a lot of weight, but wasn't active enough to do this. So I appreciate the food, but it's good.
Did you have plenty of supplies while you were over in Korea?
We had everything we needed, and we slept in a tent, but that was all right. You know, we didn't, because we had to be ready to move, because already in '52, see, the Korean War had gone back and forth across that peninsula from Busan clear north to China twice, and so we had to be ready to move.
Did you feel much pressure or stress when you were over in Korea?
No, I didn't. I was equipped, I was prepared, I knew how to work in an office. I've been working in an office 6 years before I went to the Army. So I knew what typewriters were, and ad machines were, and how to write, keep records, so I was always comfortable.
Did you do anything special for good luck?
Well, we had a contest every Saturday. We had our shoes shined and our brass polished, and we go for inspection. So I won that every one Saturday. So my buddy said, "Well, Lee, you're going to be here a few times more. You keep working real hard, and so you win it 3 times. I'll get to go to Seoul for 3 days." So that was real lot of fun. I get to go to Seoul for 3 days away from my duties.
How did people in your camp entertain themselves?
Well, we had baseball games, and we played cards a lot, but we worked every day, even Sundays. So we were busy every day doing something. But we played cards, and in good weather we played softball, hardball, and some basketball. And we couldn't go hiking or anything. We had to stay around our compound. So we told stories and listened to each other's jokes and enjoyed ourselves.
What did you do when you were on leave, like in Seoul?
Well, this one leave, I got to go to Seoul this one time, and that was it. When I was in Korea, when I was in Fort Riley, I had one Christmas time I got to go because my uncle lived right there, Gypsy City. He came and got me and took me to Christmas dinner in Fort Riley. So I was back and forth from Fort Riley to Solana, not only on leave, but weekends a lot of times.
Where did you travel while you were in the service?
Well, like I say, the only travel I did between Solana and Fort Riley for that year. And then it gave me orders to report to Seattle, Washington. So I went home for 2 or 3 weeks, got prepared, got on a train, went from Solana to Denver to Seattle, to Portland, Oregon, up to Seattle. And then they put me on a ship, across the Pacific. That was my trip to Tokyo. And in Tokyo, went in by train into Yokohama. And they processed us there in Yokohama. Then they put us on a train, went clear south of southern Japan, crossed underneath. They have a train under a tunnel underneath the ocean between 2 islands. So that was a great experience to go under a tunnel. And then to Sasebo. And then we got on a Korean ship. And we had no seats, we just had to sit on the floor. We went across the peninsula to Busan, and we got us on another train, took it all the way up to Seoul, Korea. And then my trip was by bus and truck across to Chuncheon to my headquarters.
Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events that happened?
Well, we had 5 Korean soldiers in our office. They helped take care of the Korean soldiers because the 2nd Infantry Division had Korean Army men attached to the 2nd Infantry Division. So one of these men was a mathematician, and he liked math. And we had one fellow in our unit who was a good mathematician either. Well, they could get their books out, and they could understand each other about math, but they couldn't speak each other's language very good. So every time somebody would go to Tokyo, well, he'd ask to go get a book for him on math, but they'd forget about it. So this one time I got a chance to go to Tokyo. So he wrote a note in Chinese. It says what name of the book it was, where the library was, and what the name of the book was, and where I could possibly get it. So I got into Tokyo, had 3 days over there. So I took this note, walked out of the hotel, got permission to leave, and a taxi cab was sitting there. So I handed him this note in Chinese. He was Japanese. He took this note, looked, yeah, shook his head. I got into the taxi with him, and we started down through Tokyo. Tokyo at that time was rebuilding after the Second World War. We had some streets pretty good, pretty big buildings, and furthest I went, closer the streets got smaller, 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 and it was, the trees, hardly any trees, but the houses were built real close to the street. So I was wondering where in the world I'm going. But kept going, and finally stopped. I looked out, and there was books everywhere. The library that this fellow knew about where it was. Handed that note to the librarian in Chinese, the name of the book. He went and got the book, gave it to him, and I paid him. Got back into the taxi cab and took me back to the hotel. And I thought, I've had many nightmares about what in the world could have happened. Here I was in a foreign country, couldn't speak Japanese, and had a note written in Chinese what was I going to do. So that was quite an experience to get that book from my Korean friend.
What were some of the pranks that you or others would pull?
Well, in basic training, we would short sheet their beds. You ever hear of short sheeting a bed? So some guy would give us a little trouble. We'd short sheet his bed. He'd come back at night late. He'd try to get to his bed and get his feet down. He couldn't get his bed. So that was a trick that we played a lot of.
What did you think of your officers or fellow soldiers?
I was real happy. Main people I worked with in basic training, the officers were good, and they knew their job, and they trained me good. So, and the people I worked with in the offices did too. They knew what they had to do, and I was happy with people I got to work with.
Did you keep a personal journal over in Korea?
Not a personal journal, just like that story about the woman in Tokyo, and nothing written down very much.
Would you like to take a break and get something to drink and eat, or you want to
Sure.
just finish it out?
Just water.
Do you recall the day your service ended?
Absolutely. We were left my office in Chuncheon, Korea. Took a plane back down to Busan, back up to Sasebo, across the water, back up to Tokyo then, and then processed me there. And then they took us to a ship, and from the ship then cleared us Seattle. Took 12 days. Cleared Seattle, and I was processed there and put on a train, and rode a train east through Washington, cleared through Montana, cleared back to Colorado Springs, and we had 2 men in a compartment. We had our bed in there and everything. So then I Colorado Springs, and I was just released from that at Colorado Springs, and then I caught a ride to Salina, Kansas.
What did you do in the days and weeks after your service had ended?
Came home to my wife and newborn son. He was just from July to October age, and I went back to my old job, and so it was right, just went from the Army back to work again.
Did you make any close friends while you were in the service?
Oh, some yes, but I never kept track of a lot of them. Some of them were 2 of them from Salina, and I see them every once in a while. So, and then I write to one fellow once in a while too, because he's 52 years now. A lot of them are gone.
Did you join any veterans organizations when you got back?
I was put in the inactive reserve, and which I didn't know what to do. Then I joined the American Legion, and I've been a member of the American Legion ever since then.
And what was your career after the war?
I went back to my old job. I was in the grain business, and I worked with traffic, which were handling boxcars of grain, keeping records of them, and then keeping record of the money with that too. It was the same thing I'd done for 6 years before I went in the Army.
Did your military experience influence the way you think about war or the military in general?
No, it didn't change me any, and I always think it's necessary because we've got to protect our country and for freedom and try to make the rest of the world free too.
What kinds of activities does your post or association do, like the American Legion?
American Legion has a baseball activity. Maybe you've heard of that. They have one A, B, and C, I think it is, baseball leagues. And so help those young men to play baseball, and it's a great activity.
Do you attend any reunions?
No, I don't. I never did attend any reunions.
How did your service and your experiences affect your life?
Oh, I don't know if it's affected me at all, except I'm proud that I did serve and be a part of the military.
Is there anything that you'd like to add that we haven't covered in the interview?
Every man should have an opportunity to participate in some kind of military duty. And I think that's really important to young men to learn to be a part of the military and learn what it's all about. Physical training as well as association with men of their age. So I would close with that.